Welcome everybody. My name is Alexandra. I'm a senior designer here at Cambridge International. Prior to this, I was a philosophy and psychology teacher. Today we are going to, as you can see on the screen, the contents of today's session will go over authentic integration of digital technologies in education. We are going to be talking about practical strategies for metacognition in online learning, and we will also be talking about how to make the best use of metacognition. We will be looking at what the future holds or the possibilities that we have. Before we actually start talking about all the practicalities, I think it is really important to look at what metacognitive knowledge is. And you have on the screen now the quote from John Flavel from back in 1979. You can also probably remember the keynote session last week. One thing that really stuck with me was the reference to metacognition being thinking about our own cognition. And it is something that has been, as you can see, obviously, as you know, on from since back in 1979 at least. Now, when obviously the session today is to talk about metacognition and online learning, so one of the first things that we would like to talk about and clarify is how we define online learning, because there are so many definitions, so many things that we can say about online learning. And for that, I think what we could do is start doing something fun, which is go to Mentimeter. So hopefully you will have a device that you can use, or you can do it on the browser. So if you could go to www.menti.com and use the code that is now on the screen, you will have the opportunity to give us 3 phrases to describe what do you see or think online learning is. So the code is 83946101. We will give you a couple of seconds to join to Mentimeter, and again the code is 83946101. So if you could give us 3 phrases to describe online learning, that would be absolutely fantastic. Let's see if responses are starting to come in.
Thanks, Alex. While everybody is putting their responses on, I thought I might just introduce myself as well. My name's Claire Roper, and I'm one of the trainers that does work with Cambridge. And I was thinking this morning, actually, that I've been working with Cambridge for over 15 years now. But as well as that, I'm also a full-time teacher. So I'm joining you from my school this morning, and I've just seen all the students sort of walking past me. So if you hear classroom noises, that's because I'm at school. Oh, I can see we're getting quite a lot of words coming in, Alex. So visualization, device, chat box, participation, networks. I'm liking that. Oh, I like exciting.
And challenging, look.
Yes. I like also individual responsibility. I think that's one thing that's definitely sort of come to light for me in terms of online learning, has been the sort of, I guess, the opportunity for students to sort of self-regulate their own work when they are online. Dynamic is also very true. I think that we can see dynamic at work right now as everybody's adding their words to our word cloud on online learning.
And of course, we have the synchronous and asynchronous. Yes. And the self-learning, again, going back to the self-regulation and the monitoring of own self-learning. So actually, one of the challenges is really interesting. Yeah, flexible. The network is really an interesting one as well.
Yeah. I can see that virtual learning and challenging are coming up as being words that a few people are using. That's why they're larger in the middle. And so, yeah, virtual learning environments, I think, has been something that those of us that are in the classroom have really had to engage with during the pandemic. And some of our skills in terms of online learning have definitely accelerated because of the context of our classrooms at the moment. But I like the idea that there's some words there that are challenging, difficult, but also positive words like flexible and exciting.
Yeah. Absolutely. And even the challenge, yes, it is, and I think is all the opportunities that come from a challenge, right? So all the problem solving, all the responsibility, the independence as well, the innovation, that's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for adding all of your words about what online learning means to you. I think it's meant all sorts of different things to a lot of us during the pandemic, but also just in our general classes, even now that some of us are back in classrooms and some of us are sort of doing a mix of distance learning and online learning. So if we can go back to the presentation and have a look at what we thought online learning when Alex and I got together and talked about this. So just in terms of definitions of what online learning means, we've put a whole lot of different words and phrases there because I think it does mean different things to different people. So just general e-learning and learning in a virtual environment, which is what a lot of people came up with. And also distance learning, which was also something that's we've talked about and how it can be delivered online. But the phrase that we're going to be using today is the sort of more broader term of digital technologies in the classroom. So those could include distance learning and virtual environments, but also online learning that can occur in a physical classroom where you might all be in school in one place at one time. So we're going to look at that sort of more broad context and think about what that means in terms of metacognition. And I think that one of the key things about metacognition has been that as we talk about students sort of gaining greater control of their learning in an online environment than the sort of traditional environments that they might have been in, we've got this idea that they've got a greater demand really to sort of do some self-regulation, and that means that there's a really strong link between metacognition and online learning, which has meant this workshop today really links in with the keynote address and the conference as a whole. If we have a look now at some of the digital technologies that have been used in education, I want to just take us through a model that has been used not necessarily for metacognition, but just having a look at digital technologies in general. And this was put together by Dr. Ruben Pointadura, who is from Harvard University in the United States. And he talks about this SAMR model about how we can determine the level of digital technology in the online environment. And what we'll be doing today is really getting a sense of how that might relate to metacognition and online learning. So if we have a look at his model, the model itself is shown in this sort of diagram and has 4 levels. And at the top level, we talk about substitution, and that's then followed by augmentation. And those two are kind of grouped together as discussed as being enhancement of what's going on in the classroom. And then the last 2 are modification and redefinition. And he talks about those as being transformation in terms of online use and digital technologies in our classrooms. And he put this model together, and there's a lot of information about it that you could go and find and research. Really, when he was starting to develop the ideas of digital technologies in the classrooms in about, I think it was 2012, but definitely a long time before the pandemic and a lot of online learning started to take place. And so I wanted to just explain the model using an example that isn't about metacognition, but is linked inextricably with Cambridge assessment, and that is about assessment itself. And so if we have a look at the first level, substitution, you could give an example of a substitution in terms of technology, where in a traditional classroom, you might have had a test that was paper-based, and you substituted that with something which was an online digital form. And so that would be the sort of first level of digital technologies that we could use. And then if you took it a little bit further, you could then augment your assessment by adding automated marking to it that would be immediate and give your students direct feedback. So that would be something where there's a functional improvement to what you can do in a traditional learning environment. Moving on then to modification. And so in the modification setup, you might do something where you've got a creative assessment or a project that has opportunity to use different online digital technologies. And so that's really changing the task of assessment from being something from the paper-based original traditional assessment to something quite significantly redesigned. And so we would describe that as a modification of the original work. And then the redefinition one would be where you go even a step further and perhaps add something like audio feedback to the students after having done their assessment. And so the feedback itself is also not something that would be what we would consider in a traditional classroom. So these 4 levels of the model that Dr. Pointadera put together, I think for me, encompass all the range of things that we can do in the online environment in terms of how we can think about our classrooms and what opportunities we have to think about digital technologies. And so I wanted to take this idea of online learning and this model and then cross it over with the idea about what that means in terms of metacognition and the ideas of how that could be developed further in our classrooms to extend our students and really enable them to get the best out of their lessons. So to do that, we're going to first think about how you're been using online digital technologies and reflect about your own integration on that. So you'll find the Mentimeter code again, and on the next slide in the Mentimeter, you will find this diagram. And what I'd love you to do is to just put like a pin, a marker point for me to think about where do most of your lessons fall now when you use online digital technologies. Are most of your lessons using just substitution? Most of your lessons just augmentation? Most modification or most redefinition? And so if you can go back to the Menti and then put a little pin for me as to where do you think. So do some self-reflection, a bit of metacognition yourselves, and think about your own digital classrooms at the moment, and not necessarily about assessment, but just about your own teaching. Where are you falling in terms of your metacognition? Sorry, your digital online learning. So the link then for the Mentimeter again is the same as before. So that's the code for it is 83946101. And there's also a QR code there if you've got an enabled device. So I can see we've got some pins pasted in all the different levels. So some people are just substitution, and a few people I'm impressed to see are doing lots of redefinition of their online digital classrooms. Most people are seeming to think that they're in the area on modification, and a few more coming up with substitution. Alex, I really enjoy this ability for everybody to engage with our presentation today. It really is a workshop, and we would love that you're able to integrate with us and talk to us online and use some of the digital technologies that are possible.
It is an example that actually we don't have to be all in the same space to collaborate and to learn from each other, and this is an amazing opportunity, really. And it's lovely to see everyone putting the pins, and I find it fantastic, really.
I think there are so many new innovative ways that people are enabling us to use the online environment, and this workshop, as you say, virtually all over the world, means that we're probably redefining how you would have a conference, which would originally have been everybody in one room listening to us, standing up in front of you and not being able to engage and put pins on a screen. So this is really exciting. Yes, so I can see that a lot of you are adding your pins now to our page. So we've got quite a few people in each level. I like the person who's put themselves halfway between augmentation and modification. I think sometimes I also feel halfway between one level and another, and I do appreciate actually just pinning yourself into one specific spot is probably difficult. But again, reflection on where we are and what we're doing in our classrooms in terms of online learning is always a good activity ourselves. We ask our students to self-reflect, but I think self-reflection ourselves is also really useful.
Absolutely, is modeling the metacognition techniques as well, right? You know, we need to kind of, you know, look where we are and where do we want to go, and so it's really good.
It is. It's really exciting. Thank you very much. Can we have the slides back now? Okay, so I'd like to think now and take our idea about digital technologies and online learning and that model and think about some of the practical strategies that we might be able to employ for the first two levels. So that was substitution and augmentation, and so that's sort of the enhancement level of the model. And so if we think about that, I've thought about some things that I might do in my classroom that might be considered substitution or augmentation. So one thing I might do in terms of metacognitive learning would be to put together an online quiz, particularly maybe focused at some AO1 skills, some knowledge recall, and perhaps an example of that would be to use Kahoot. Oh, let me just see. Yeah, so that's the first opportunity that one might have to use online learning with metacognition. Another thing that I did when I was brainstorming about this was to just think about how we might just simply search the web to find content. And that would also be use of online learning, or perhaps to ask our students to bookmark something that they've seen to go back and look at later. Some of my students I know use the spell check function when they're doing some corrections of their own homework. And I know a lot of my students also have been learning via a live web link, particularly during lockdown. So those are 5 strategies that we could consider, in my mind, to be enhancements. So there are things that we could have done in the classroom. You could receive instruction just from me verbally in front of the room. You could print or look at something later. There are dictionaries to use rather than doing the spell check function. So there are an enhancement of metacognition. And I thought we would get really brave now and try something absolutely new on Mentimeter. And this time we're going to plot a graph. I'm a scientist, in fact, and I love looking at graphs. So what I'd like you to do now is to rank each of these tasks that I've given you here, the 5 tasks on the screen, and you'll see them on the Mentimeter. And you're going to rank them as to whether you think they are mostly substitution, so that would be very low digital use of technology, or quite high use of digital technology, so maybe augmentation, and then also to rank them in terms of how effective you think they might be as a metacognitive tool. Sorry, I'm got myself tongue-tied. Metacognitive tool. So if we could have a think about those and then work through the little set of tasks on the Mentimeter and use the slide bar to decide where you would put them on those levels, and we'll have a look and see where they fall as a kind of average of everybody's thinking together in terms of what we might do in terms of reflecting on these 5 tasks in terms of what they might mean in terms of online metacognitive learning. Okay, so this is where our graph is at the moment. So at the moment we've got number 3 right down as very low in terms of as metacognitive environment. Oh, and they're moving as everybody's adding their own ranking to it. So it'll be really interesting because what the graph's showing us is an average of everybody's thoughts together. So as new people add their thoughts, I'm going to see those dots of those 5 tasks moving around as we kind of think and reflect as to how they're used in our classrooms at the moment in terms of metacognitive learning and digital technologies.
And this is a really interesting exercise as well, because it makes us think the reasons why we can choose some activities and how they actually fit with the objectives that we have, with the aims. So it is it is very easy to get distracted by, you know, the flashy things and lose track of what is behind, so the reasoning behind using it. So this is a really interesting exercise.
It is indeed. So I'm interested that we've got some that are lower in terms of their metacognitive learning, exactly what you were saying there, Alex. So just using spell check, we feel is fairly low in terms of its metacognitive learning, but actually it falls higher in terms of the use of digital technologies. And so I think we definitely sometimes get these outliers where, for me, when I was thinking about this and reflecting, it wasn't necessarily that great online technologies always produce great metacognitive learning. There can be some that are actually fairly simple in terms of their technology use, but actually enable us to land up having really good metacognitive lessons, and the reverse. And so I think that's really quite a useful thing to do when we kind of reflect and think about each one of those tools. I can see that we're all coming together and thinking slightly differently of each of those, so it'll be interesting to have a look at where the spots fall at the end. But I think let's go back to the presentation and have a look at some tasks that might be considered in terms of transformation, which is really another level of the metacognitive load. So in terms of transformation, one thing that this is more about enhancement. I've got myself all muddled up. So these are some examples that I've been using in my classrooms in terms of enhancement. So this is an example that I've done with my students where they've done some ERAG rating. So that's red, amber, green. But instead of doing so on paper, they've done it in a digital form. And that's meant that I've been able to get on the right-hand side over here a really good idea about where they might be in terms of the whole class and the averages amongst them in terms of their concerns after a lesson as to different parts of the syllabus. So I would say that's just enhancement. Another colleague of mine who works in computer science did a similar thing, but this time he used a spreadsheet and asked his students to add their scores as to how confident they were when they were reflecting on some revision. And he then used conditional formatting to work out where most of the class was confident about a task and others who were not confident about various parts of the syllabus. So again, that would just be enhancement, but it definitely was a really good reflective exercise in terms of metacognitive learning. And then we often do this at school, which is to ask the students to fill in an e-ticket. And this can be something we do on a virtual classroom, but also in our traditional classrooms here back at school. So we ask our students at the end of a lesson to really reflect on what they found interesting, what they'd like to know about more, and if they could change something in the lesson, what it would be. So it gives us a bit of feedback and enables us to really get a sense of where our students and enables them to reflect too, which is really great metacognition. And what's really useful about doing this online, rather than just maybe giving them post-it notes at the end of a lesson, is that we're able to keep a track record of them and go back and have a look because it's all collected and stored in a file that we can then go back and review. And then we also have another tool which is called Reflect, where we can ask the students to tell us how they're feeling about their progress in class, and they can choose one of the faces so that represents their mood at the moment, and then add in a word that might express that mood even a little bit further. And so this is an example from one of my classes where the students have mostly seem to be in sort of at a smiley face rather than a big grin. A few of them are sort of a bit more neutral face, and they've added words to describe how they're feeling. And that definitely gives me a sense of where they're at the moment in their lessons, but also really makes them to also just think, how am I getting on at the moment, and what else do I need to be doing, and what might be interfering with my own learning. And so these electronic tools are actually only an enhancement of what's possible in our traditional classrooms, and there are definitely ways of doing this without using online technologies, but I think that the online environment has enabled us to do this far more easily, and so I think there's less excuses for not doing this now that we have these tools very much more at our fingertips. And then here's another one that actually is done by a colleague of mine in the English department, where they were asked to have a bit of a conversation almost with themselves at the beginning of the lesson, to write down some thoughts about their own reflections. And that kept them a bit of a online digital journal, if you like. But it was a journal that the teacher could also engage with, and that meant that they were able to give them feedback, and there was a bit of an online dialogue between the student and the teacher, as a personal journal that they were able to review how they felt initially, and then go back and have a look and see how they were feeling towards the end of a lesson, or maybe the next day. And so online digital journals, again, can be done in the classroom without any online technology, but also can be done online. And so if we move then to what we can't really do in the classroom, and actually requires transformation of what we have available to us in terms of our online technologies now, and think about some other activities that might be possible. So I've thought of another 5, and we're going to have another Mentimeter. So if I explain those to you, and then you can start putting your thoughts about where they might fall. Graph that we were drawing before. So one that I thought of is to use text-to-speech tools to check pronunciation of unfamiliar words. So that technology has really become much more available now, that you can use online. It wasn't available before. And then I have used quite often actually to give my students feedback using audio notes rather than some written feedback. So having some audio notes alongside a piece of text. And then there's also the opportunity to do collaborative online flowcharts. And those flowcharts, I'll have to show you some of the examples that I've been doing with some of my students in the classroom. So those are the first 2. So the text-to-speech tools and the audio notes. And then the third one, where you can make online collaborative flowcharts. Those ones, you can make flowcharts on pieces of paper, but you can't do it collaboratively online without some of these new technologies. And here's an example of some of the collaborative maps that I've been making with my students. This makes them draw together in different breakout rooms and make diagrams and maps of different parts of the syllabus. On the right hand side, you can see that they've been using a Venn diagram to categorize different parts of their knowledge into different areas, and down below over here to draw a diagram, and a lot of students collaborated on that together to summarize and to put into the multi-flow thinking map. And I really stress to my students that we're not talking here about just brainstorming mind maps, but actually really using the thinking map idea of structuring how we put data and collect it. And so I've got a little video which hopefully we can play for you to just show you my students doing this, so that you can kind of get a visual idea of what it looks like when they're engaging with each other together online. I don't know if that video is possible to bring up for everyone. It doesn't seem to be coming on at the moment, but I'll just give the technical team behind us a moment or two to find that. So that's a little video that shows the students moving, so that I've had to blur their names for protection purposes, but you can see them moving over here, the little squares, into different places, and they're all doing this on a screen together. So they're all looking together at the same screen, moving collaboratively, putting together these little triangles to make a diagram together, joining the words together. So each of their names is on one of those cursors, which is colored from one to another. Thank you very much. And stop that video. And so that would be an example of a collaborative online thinking map or diagram. And then the next thought I had would be to make an online video of a practical task, which means that the students can actually, instead of just doing it for themselves in the classroom, look back at it and have a look and see what they did themselves. And so there's another little video of one of my students doing one of her practicals at home and uploading this to a website where we were all able to watch her little video of her practical and review what she had done in her practical activity. So there's a new little video hopefully coming up. Jane, I can see you've asked about what the app was to do the flow maps. Yeah, so Miro or Mural Board, and there's another one called Lucid Chart. So here the student is just describing how she's put her cucumbers, because this was a biology practical.
The one in
yeah, so yeah, we don't need to necessarily just hear her do it, but you'll see that she's shown her cucumbers here and she's been weighing them. And I was quite interested because she's going to take one of them out of the water to weigh it in a moment. She reflected afterwards when she did this, when she watched the video back, that actually when she weighed these pieces of cucumber, she didn't blot them dry. And if we have any biology teachers on the call, they'll know that actually then she's measuring the water from the drips around the cucumber as well as the cucumber itself. And so when she went back and looked at this video, she was able to reflect and think, gosh, I should have wiped the balance and taken the water drops that were around the cucumber to get my results to being more correct, rather than just putting them straight onto the balance. And so this opportunity to actually video yourself doing an activity and then reflect back on it is a really interesting idea of something that we can do new that's for the online technologies. And you can probably see that she's doing this at home, not in the classroom, because this we did during one of the lockdowns here in the UK. Thank you for the video. We can stop it there. We don't need to watch her on. And so that would be an example of reviewing an online video activity. I've spoken to some of my colleagues in the PE department, and they've been doing something similar with students that are doing sport activities, where they go back and watch themselves perform a particular sport task and review that online. And then the last one that I thought was transformative is exactly what we're doing at the moment, which is to use live polls to share our understanding of something, for example, using Mentimeter itself. And so that would be the the last activity on that. So I think that what we need to do now is to have a think about oh, this is the students reviewing the videos, and that program is called Flipgrid, but there are, I think, other ones as well. So the last one there is the activity to do the live polls. So back to Mentimeter for us. If you can go back onto Mentimeter and think about those 5 activities I've shown you, and which ones do you feel were the most transformative in terms of what's possible in our traditional classrooms to using online technologies, and which ones gave the most metacognitive learning to the students. So the same task as we did before, but now 5 more activities that are more transformative. So the code again is 83946101, and that's on the menti.com website. So if you could rate those 5 activities that I've just shown you now, and think about how you would rank them in terms of how much metacognitive learning they're giving, and how much digital integration they've been using in terms of online technologies.
And what amazing examples did you give, Claire? It's just really, really interesting to see all this and the possibilities as well, especially if we look at lockdown and how we were all forced to change a little bit quicker than we expected, and it's just really, really interesting.
It is. It really is amazing, Alex. It's. I think back about the very first Mentimeter we gave you, where you were asked you about what online learning means for you, and I really enjoyed the people that said that it was exciting, because for me it was very exciting too. It was an opportunity where we were given freedom to try new tools that we might not have thought about using before. And if you were able to then also reflect in terms of what that meant in terms of metacognitive learning, it's really meant that it's been transformative in terms of what we've been able to do with our students. So there are some that are like the reflective tools, which are just enhancements of our environment that have made things easier, but also some really exciting ones that have really transformed things. So I'm really pleased to see that the collaborative flowchart has landed up near the high top end, because that's something that I really, really enjoy doing, and I can see that was something that piqued Jen's interest as well, in that you want to know more about where to use that. So as I said to you, Lucid Chart or Miro board, but also some other Jamboard. You could also do flowcharts like that collaboratively on Jamboard. As a way of making them, but I also really stress to my students that thinking maps, and if you Google thinking maps, you'll see that there are 8 different types, rather than just making a static diagram of all sorts of things, because then it becomes really metacognitive learning. And then I can see that most people feel that it's the speech tools for pronunciation that are not really using much metacognition, and I agree with you for sure. Although they do suggest that there's some self-regulation from the student being able to do that, it's not really transforming their metacognitive learning that much, but it is definitely something that they could not have possibly done without the online tools. So thank you very much for that Mentimeter, and jump back to the presentation again. Thank you very much to the team behind the scenes helping us with this very online active presentation that we're doing. Okay, so actually it's straight back to the board again, and the next slide is to ask you to share with us some of the ideas that you've been having in terms of metacognition and online learning. What have you been using? If you can give us some ideas, and we could have a look at what they all are, and share and have some ideas that we could possibly use ourselves. So if you can just give 1 or 2 ideas of things that you've done in your classrooms. I've shown you some of the ones that we've been doing at my school. And I wonder what you've all been up to. I'm sure that I'll be able to get some ideas from you as well. So sharing your ideas in terms of developing metacognition. So another fan of Flipgrid, absolutely. And I wonder if you've also been using it in terms of using reflection. So just allowing the students to really review what they've looked at, what they've done themselves. I was talking to the Modern Foreign Languages department, and they were using Flipgrid to use a new tool where the students are able to use mirror, so that they're able to talk to themselves straight away. So they say one thing and then be the person in the reply, but it's the same student, and they're able to sort of have a bit of a conversation and dialogue with each other. So yeah, absolutely, Kahoot is a good favorite. It's one of the tools that for me I would say is probably really low in terms of metacognition, but it does definitely engage students and encourage them to revise and challenge each other.
I think a really interesting thing is that actually using this new technology sometimes actually gets our students to engage even more with us. It makes us closer in quite a lot of ways. So even though we were distant, during quite a long time, this past year and a half, we've been able to actually get closer together. So that is really interesting. And we have some more examples, Jamboard and journaling.
Yes. And Padlet. I'd forgotten about Padlet, but absolutely, Padlet's a brilliant one. Also for thinking about collaborating together. And I'm pleased to see somebody else uses Miro as well. So that's great. As you say, I think Padlet's particularly useful for students in primary school. I think it's a really easy one for them to engage with. And yeah, absolutely, just using videos from across the cultural hubs for motivation. I like that idea as well.
This is really important, helping the students set goals in their learning journals and monitor constructive feedback. So this is really good. Obviously, Google Docs will be all over the place, and cognitive.
Yeah. And then I saw Whiteboard FI fly up on the left-hand side. Whiteboard FI, for those of you that have not used it, is it's like a mini whiteboard that you can put in front of all your classes so that they're able to log on and then answer questions and do that. And we've used Whiteboard FI because the students don't see each other's whiteboards and you can just see it personally. They can actually ask you questions where they don't feel confident perhaps speaking out in class and just saying, I'm struggling with this or something. And so Whiteboard FI is actually really quite a good way. I've also posted diagrams on them and they've all furiously labeled them. So definitely have a go at Whiteboard FI if you've not tried that one yet. And Nearpod is another really good activity in terms of engagement. We need to think about each one of these tools in terms of not only that they're good for online learning, but how can we use them in terms of metacognition, and think back about the keynote address that was given last week and think about how we are engaging our students in terms of their own learning and reflections.
Yeah, and also about like their own development journeys, because it will be different, but it is good to start as early as possible.
Absolutely. I'll leave that board on, so if anyone wants to add some extra ones onto it, we can have a look at them again. But I think we'll go back to the presentation and just show you one final example from me where the students have written an essay but then have got prompt words on the right hand side by the teacher, and the prompt line for the first bit was, when I was writing this topic sentence, I was thinking about, and then the student needed to fill in what they were thinking about in their topic sentence. And so it was really not just about writing the essay, but actually thinking about why you were doing that, what about it made you think. And so the second one, when I made this comparative pivot, I was mainly focused on trying to write about, and then they filled in the rest. And so it was really sort of asking them to not just write the essay, but actually just think about what they were doing alongside it. And the digital technology enabled them to have this conversation with the teacher by having the essay, but also the thought process behind each of the steps along the way. So yeah, I'm sure many examples that we'll be able to have a look at and discuss. So do keep sharing them on the mirror board, sorry, the Mentimeter if you'd like to. I think it's over to you, Alex.
It is indeed, and I don't have so many, amazing things to show, I'm afraid. So I think, but the way we thought about this session was actually to then go back and to remind ourselves, how we can, as teachers, how can we make the best use of metacognition, and at all levels. So Claire was amazing, showing what we can do at classroom level, or regardless of being a physical classroom or if we are doing it online. There are several, if we are all in the same space or not. But then what can we teachers do to make the best use of metacognition? And you have four topics there on the screen. So we have to make learning goals specific, so that actually our learners can plan their own strategies and the ways to monitor their own progress towards achieving those goals. We have the reference to planning for progression in the teaching of new metacognition strategies. So starting with activating prior knowledge, use explicit strategy instruction, ending with independent practice and structured reflection. This is so important. And then, of course, we have to be modeling the use of metacognitive strategies. So we can and we should think aloud, because we are showing all this. How do we use it? And our learners will start using it as well, even without even when they don't want to. They will because it will become so natural. And use visual resources to support young children in planning, monitoring, and evaluating their own learning. The journey can start as early as possible, and of course it will have to be. We will have to take into consideration their development stage. as our keynote reminded us last week. But it's never too late, and you know, children will actually do this planning, and then they will look at what they are doing, and they are obviously they will not know that what they are doing is metacognition, but they will actually do it in practice. And then what we can do as on a wider scenario. So we've been through the classroom model, and then teachers, so at a department level, at teaching, you know, teachers level, but then what our schools can do to make the best use of metacognition. One thing that is really important for us is professional development, and to prioritize this professional development. And it does not always mean, you know, go to a training course or go to a face-to-face event. Actually, it also means, you know, working together, supporting each other, encouraging the practices, sharing the practices, and reflecting, and see how we can what did not work, and you know, what was all behind it. Involve the community, because actually the school community will be able to promote metacognitive talk, you know, the parents, the wider community, and finally evaluate the impact of the new strategies. So monitor what the new strategies, see how they are doing, our, you know, our learners behaving, or how have they been progressing, how is it is something that we will see the reward of all this work that we put together, because at the end of the day, our aim is to actually raise confident, responsible, reflective, innovative, and engaged learners. And these are actually the Cambridge Learner attributes. So at the end, regardless of the flashy things and the amazing things that technology can do for us, what we really want is to raise our children to become confident, sure of themselves, innovative, people that actually reflect and can engage positively with the world. So very, very briefly, I think this is what I, you know, what I have to show you, to talk about, to give you really. We have lots of resources, so reach out and check what we have, because we can always talk. And actually, my aim was more to raise questions, or to kind of show a little bit of what we have to offer, but to leave the door open really. And it's so important when we talk about, when we look at the future, what, you know, what is going to happen. What now that we had to start using online tools to deliver quite a lot of our teaching, that we had to adapt to our learning. What does the future hold really? What are the challenges, Claire?
Yes, Alex, you and I remember talking about this when we started putting our presentation together, and I told you that I was terribly excited about what artificial intelligence might mean for us as educators. So it's already infiltrating education, and there are lots of different aspects about artificial intelligence that we're already using. So when I gave you the examples about pronunciation and so on, actually a lot of those programs are using artificial intelligence behind the scenes, and they are incredibly useful in terms of doing live translations and inclusive learning in terms of students that are needing extra sort of support for them in terms of neurodiversity. But there's also ideas about using chatbot tutors and personalized education, where there are quite a lot of online tools where the students can engage with a quiz, and then based on their results from the particular question, AI will then develop new questions for them that would be along the lines of something that maybe they're challenged by, and really get a sense of where those sort of gaps are in the student's knowledge or what types of skills that they struggle with. And those types of technologies actually already exist. I think quite a lot of teachers perhaps don't even realize that artificial intelligence is behind them. For me, I always have a sort of air of caution about it because of how that data is being used and how it could be misconstrued by somebody, but also how good and how much bias is in the data sets that are behind them. But really exciting in terms of where that might take us in terms of analysing student performance and what we could do in an environment where teachers are in short supply. So some really exciting ideas in terms of artificial intelligence and what that means in terms of our metacognitive learning environment. But then also the augmented reality environment. So you might have heard about the metaverse, the idea that you could have a virtual reality meetings using avatars. And there's a little diagram on the right-hand side of a whole lot of people perhaps meeting in some sort of virtual space. And being able to connect with each other in an environment where they're not all in the same room. And that opens all sorts of ideas and opportunities. We could use beaming in experts in the field and enabling our students to engage with people from different diversities and backgrounds and cultures, and making them really reflect on what their learning means. So there are quite a lot of aspects about the online environment that I think are actually still in their infancy, and whereas the idea about teaching online a few years ago seemed to be something quite foreign to us, and now has become almost commonplace. Actually, I think that these other tools in terms of AI and augmented reality might even change things further as we move on into the next chapter of online learning. And for me, I guess when I sort of thought about this at the end, I don't know what you think, Alex, it's again that sort of graph that I was talking about. It's the idea that actually sometimes just the simple things, which are sort of convenient and useful, like just doing an exit poll that is just able to sort of collect the answers digitally, can be much more effective than doing something very advanced but hasn't got that same level of metacognition in terms of its ability. So I think sometimes we need to sort of reflect for ourselves in terms of, is this a flashy tool, or is this actually really bringing something to my classroom that's going to enhance the learning of my students? And I think that reflection when we talk about the online environment is really, really critical.
Yes, absolutely. Is the going back to the basics? Is the purpose? Is the why we do this? And that is, for me, that is the most important thing. And then we can think about all this, amazing opportunities that we have in front of us, and challenge things and use really shiny tools if we have to. But for me, the most important thing is to always remember why we do this, and this is the purpose. So I think that's the exciting side of all this, and it's the ability that we all have to train ourselves to reflect and to monitor what we are doing, to evaluate what we are doing, and then to review our paths as well. I think that is really, really interesting, and sometimes life gets so busy that we forget to do this ourselves, and we must do it, because we must, as teachers, we must be role models, and this is so useful for everything in our lives, not just our teaching, our as teachers, but for us as human beings, really. So I think it's amazing what we have in front of us, all the possibilities, but we need to always remember our purpose and the why we do this.
Absolutely, Alex. Thank you very much. So I think the end of what we have for you. So it's really over to you in terms of any questions that you might have for us. I don't know if I've missed any up in the thread that the team behind the scenes would like to sort of point out. But I'm very happy to take any questions that you might have and answer any of those.
I couldn't find, I think there's one about certificates that the team will have to respond to this. So all the amazing people that are behind the scenes helping us out. Thank you, everyone, like really nice comments, and And it was so lovely to, to be here with you, with all of you, learning, and people from so many different places. It's unbelievable. It's such an honor, really. It's a privilege to be able to share our thoughts with you as well.
Absolutely. I think the idea that we're a global community really does come to the fore when we're able to come together like this in a moment of time across the whole world as teachers sort of unifying on a common goal to do the best for our students.
Absolutely. Yes,
Great.
everybody will be sending the recording of this session. So if you really want to, you can always listen to us again.
or share some ideas with your colleagues. It would be really lovely to sort of have that continued conversation with other people in your school and seeing what they do and others in your community.
And to get in touch, always, if you just get in touch with us with your ideas, and if you have questions, you can always reach out and contact us. So that is always the door open for you guys.
Elisabetta, nice to know that you're in Rome. Thank you very much. Have a good day to you too. We've got a question there about critical thinking and metacognition. What do you think there, Alex? So for me, I think the two are definitely linked. I would almost say that the critical thinking might be a subset of metacognition, but I do know that of what I know of metacognition, and definitely I think our keynote was much more of an expert than me, is that that the two are definitely inextricably linked. But I wouldn't say that all of metacognition is about critical thinking. There's other aspects about self-reflection that might not be necessarily critical thinking itself.
Yes, absolutely. It is a part, but it is not the whole thing. So yes, absolutely.
Great.
We are getting to the end of the session. I'm not sure if there's any other housekeeping that needs to be done by the team. So
really, just to say a big thank you to both Alexandra and Claire for a really insightful session. We've had some great comments in the chat box from everybody, just saying how useful and how great it's been. So thank you both for your time and for giving us such a great session.
It's a really great pleasure to be with you all, and we'll have a good day and a good year with your students.
Yes, have a good day, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. It was a pleasure.